I'm just,
upsets me that you
I'm
have
on
watched
Moana right now.
that, like, you know me.
But like, you think of them just again leaving up into
Like this
It's like, I'm
I was-
naturally doing this.
yeah.
Welcome to the Three Fates podcast. I'm Deanne.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Meredith.
We are your three hosts today. So happy to be back, ladies. Mm-hmm. And we have decided, actually, usually we start with a channel to get our agenda for today, but we decided to play off the heels of a previous episode on matrix work. Mm-hmm. And we just felt like we could go in deeper. There was a deeper dive of information. I mean, in anything spirituality, like you can go for hours into it. But this one's really important. So we thought that we would just kind of talk a little bit about our personal experiences and stuff as well in the matrix of spirituality, right? And how that plays into our family dynamics and our relationships. How us maybe opening into our spiritual gifts or perhaps even choosing to explore this world more, how did that change the matrix within our family and our friendships? Mm-hmm. Does that kind of summarize it up for you, ladies?
And within ourselves even, right?
Yeah,
Because
within
of
ourselves. That's a whole matrix. So again, last episode, if you are confused with that word, and we don't need to get hung up on the word, as we were also saying, it's just more of a terminology that Pam and I are more comfortable going by. But listen to that episode first so you get an understanding of a cluster of energy is and then how the consciousness stems from that. You can go and play that one, then come back to this one. Mm-hmm. So where do you guys want to start with this all?
Well, I think we were speaking about just the energy of when you're going down your spiritual path, how that obviously shifts the conditioning in your own system, maybe deconditioning, maybe plugging into more aligned matrices with that feel good to you, that shifts really your personality or who you are, how you see the world. And then that can change and shift the people around you, like maybe how you resonate with certain friends or your family members. And then it changes relationships potentially. And how do we navigate that? And what's the emotional aspect of that? And it's such a delicate thing. And and especially now, especially the past few years, I've noticed a lot of people having this fear of stepping into what feels more authentically aligned to them because they're afraid of losing connection and friendships.
Mm-hmm. Translation. I'm going through the changes.
Yes.
Who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to do with this? Who am I now? What am I going to do? Will people still like me? Will I lose all my friends? How do I navigate this new reality?
Is my job going to change? What does that look like to enter into a complete new career field and financially support myself or family?
Let's spiral for a second.
Yeah.
I love spiraling. What other kind of questions? Because this is the relatability part, right? Like, what does this mean about me?
Uh-huh.
Letting go of like old belief systems that you've held that keep you safe. Like if I stay in this persona or in this jacket of wearing or coat, I'm like, that's familiar to me. So now I'm entering into something unfamiliar. Again, what does that mean? It's funny because I remember when in my body talk training, they always said that once you start shifting and changing yourself energetically, whatever that looked like healing or even studying or picking up a book, be prepared that everything else in your life is going to shift. So the people around you, it can strengthen. So let's also look at the upside, not even the spiral. It can strengthen relationships that were fragmented or broken. But it can also cause a lot to die off. Yeah. And so be prepared in any aspect to welcome in change, to birth, create space. And that's just hard resistance, right? But did I get off topic there? Meredith, you were like, let's do the spiral. And I was like, oh, and all this.
No, I was just meaning like, what does your spiral sound like? You know, for like in terms of questions, or if that's even something you relate to when you get into this. And I think for me, it's just, I came into this really hard and fast. And so it was like, they were really intense. And so they feel quite fresh in many ways of how to navigate that change and how to navigate new gifts and how to navigate new awareness of abilities that are like undeniable and yet easily deniable in my previous existence, right? And so who am I? What does this mean about me? A lot of the will people think I'm crazy was like a big one, right? When you start to, especially when you start to channel or you start to intuit stuff or feel things that aren't yours or become aware of things that aren't easily visible to maybe like our taught minds or our normal society, quote unquote normal. That can be a really challenging space to navigate. And I'm even as I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh, that's why I'm deaf, right? Because apart from my professional work and my personal life with my family, there's also, I can't even imagine, no, I can imagine there's been hundreds of deaths, right, of self, which is, we talk about all the time. And then sometimes that's helpful language to understand that you are going through a death and a birth process so you can live more. But those can sometimes not look like the Instagram posts where there's like a candle and a fire ceremony. Like I love that, but like
Yeah.
sometimes like I personally, I think I've shared with you, I have like the in the ditch moments. I live on a farm. I literally go lie in the ditch and lie and cry usually, or like just lie there and contemplate my existence and wonder why I'm doing all this and is it too much and is it all that? And then a cow walks by and stares at me. And then you feel stupid because this animal is staring at you like, what's your dealio? You're like, oh, I'm just having an existential crisis. So.
I think I know some of your like coming to enlightenment story.
Enlightenment. Ooh,
Big word.
big word.
Coming
But it is
to
true.
enlightenment.
Big word.
It's becoming,
She was reborn.
well, you think enlightened, you're coming enlight. Light means
may address me
knowledge.
as
So you're
the
coming into
enlightened
knowledge
one.
and awareness. Yeah. Let's not be intimidated by that word.
but in all truthful, I kind of like I know parts, but I'm curious what that was like. What happened?
Yeah.
When?
Yeah.
Were you aware as a child? Like I just want to know your story with it, and then talk about then like how did that matrix of your enlightenment change your like family friend dynamics, like the people around you. I want to hear your guys' both stories. So.
And yours.
too.
And mine, but
Yeah.
let's start with death. Let's reverse this.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that I always was intuitive and knew things, but I was not conscious of it. Right. So now looking back, I was like, oh, like that was all happening, or I was communicating and integrating things and working in with stuff in a way that I did not know. When I look back at little pictures of myself, I'm deeply suspicious in all of them in ways that no small child should be, and I'm still that way. So I was like, or as I've come back around,
Especially
I'm
when
like,
you were killing bunnies.
yeah,
Oh, right.
There was on another episode.
Yes, that is true.
dang it, trauma.
So anyways, keep going.
Anyway, D.
Yeah, sorry.
After my dad had passed, I came back to Edmonton. I was nursing in Edmonton at the time.
When was this?
2019.
Okay.
2019, so 5 years ago. And I knew that I had to make a choice of whether I was going to come back to the farm or whether I was going to stay in Edmonton, because at that time, in the farm is here in Vernon, BC, my mom was like, I'm not going to look after this myself. Like, either you guys are going to help or I'm gone. And I said, give me 6 months. And I came and visited the farm in July after, so my dad passed in January. And I came back in the summer just to kind of walk around and see how I felt and try to make this choice about, okay, was I going to give up the life and career I had in Edmonton and move back here to my family home and my
What is your
childhood bedroom?
What is your career? Like, what's your background?
Pardon?
What is your career? Like,
I'm a nurse. I'm a registered nurse. Yeah. Thank you, Dee. Yeah.
no.
Registered
Just filling
nurse.
in all the blanks over here.
Intensive care nursing and neurotrauma.
Nice.
Neurosurgical neurotrauma. So there's a little trauma in that. Lots of experience with that as well as other stuff. But then I was walking through a part on the farm, just wandering around, and I just felt really strange at this certain part. And I'm like, why is it that I'm just walking along and all of a sudden I just feel really strange, and that like energy feels different. So I felt like scared, to be honest, at that time. And I was like, why am I scared? All I did was walk from there to here. Yet every time I come to this part, I feel afraid. And so when I went back to Edmonton, I was speaking with a friend at that time. And I said, why do you think that is? And she offered this simple exercise of like, hey, why don't you just like tune in and do this energy? And so I just pictured the roots going off my feet, and she's like, just picture like a channel from your shoulders up, right? And it was just like kaboom. Like I sat there and I remember, and like my eyes, she was like, your eyes have blacked out completely. Like I no longer had an iris. The pupils had dilated completely.
Yeah.
She even took photos. It looked crazy. Like my iris was super thin. And I remember just looking at her and I'm saying like, I could destroy you. And she was like, I was like, no, I don't think you understand. What is this? Like, there's just this power coursing through my body. Like I could destroy you. And I'm not going to, but I could. And she's like, And then after that, it was just like, whew. So
A very intense experience for your first.
extremely. And so then a lot of it after that was all of a sudden I could teleport. I could like tell a view, like from, what is that, distance viewing or whatever?
Remote viewing.
Thank you. I'm on an hour and a half of sleep, so words are hard. And then just the gifts started flowing. I realized that, and I realized I was just remembering parts of myself, right, that have done this before, tapping into lots of past lifetimes, tapping into knowings, the clairs, right, clairvoyance, claircognizance, clairsentience, all that kind of stuff kind of came online. And then I realized that I just knew stuff that I didn't, there was no reason why I should know those things other than there was some other sort of work like there was no rational reason why I should know things about people, why should I know things about other dimensions, why I should know, why I can look at somebody and read stuff and read a story and pull out a story and say I'm seeing something, why I could, I was still working at the hospital and I would sense energies, like hospitals are spiritual airports, right? And so things before I learned about boundaries would follow me home. And I'm, I'd wake up and be like psychically attacked in my bedroom. And it was really intense. So things like I'd wake up with intense smells at night. Or I remember one time there was like a spider energy that had wrapped me and I felt like I woke up paralyzed in my bed in the middle of the night. Like,
Oh yeah, like a sleep paralysis. Yeah.
but I was like fully conscious and awake in that, which was really interesting. And so just all these things that were very intense and came in hard and fast. But
Did you talk about them, like with people around you?
I had a couple friends that were open to it. Yeah. And so I went through spiritual boot camp with a couple friends that were kind of maybe a little bit further ahead of me in terms of comfortability and awareness, because that was not something that I had any experience with in my life. Spirituality, I grew up Catholic and then shut that down. And so I had no spiritual practice. I had no... I had nothing for like 20 something years. And then now it's, what I do. So, as well as I still nurse, but, there's a transition there for sure, especially as I come more into like breath work and working with trauma and that I found a lot more of a passion in that one. But, a lot of it was defined by afraid of what people would think. I would say that is still active in me, as I come out more publicly and go
Just to go back to something you said, so in growing up, there was like nothing spiritual. Like how was your family life? How was your belief systems in your family?
Catholic,
and then so with that
Shame.
background,
Guilt.
okay, yeah, was that strong in
Let
like?
me summarize.
Yeah,
And no, I should say more than that. There's organs. I love organs, and I don't want to speak ill of a faith that it didn't resonate with me, but I know that there's a lot of really beautiful practices in it. And
so that was like your parents, like so it was like actually in your immediate family too, not
my
just
mom.
like
My mom is a devout Catholic. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my dad was not. And so, my mom was a devout Catholic. My dad was not, and grew up going to a Catholic primary school or elementary school. And then by the time I was like 15 or 16, I was like, this is not for me. Mainly because I was a why kid. I'm like, why? But why? Why are we doing this? Why do I have to do that? Why? And because God said so was never a good enough answer for me. It never really hit me as something that felt true. So, and to this day, that's my human design too, is like I'm an investigator. So I'm always going to ask why on stuff. But yeah, and as I can go through, gratefully, I've always been tried to be very authentic in where I'm at. I don't reveal everything because I don't believe that you have to reveal everything to other people in terms of my process and things like that. But I'm always do my best to be as authentic as possible. And some friends are like, that's weird. And they've kind of like stepped away, but the mass majority are like, yeah, sure. Cool. Like we can see that you're happy. And I've been really grateful to have a few friends that are like not into spiritual stuff at all. And I can find myself searching for words to try to make it more palatable, or what I think will make it more palatable to them. To like one of my favorite ones is talking about science. Like, well, there's a study that says, which is true. I love doing that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's also I think what really does it is they're like, we can see how happy you are. We can see that you're really stepping in. We can see that you're making a difference. And that's all that matters to us. So I've been grateful for that. And even with my mom, my dad's passed, so she doesn't have an opinion on it in this 3D. And I've spoke to her a few times about it. And she said, Carolyn Meese is someone that she always resonated with, who's like an intuitive medic, right?
Carolyn, yeah.
Does Anatomy of the Spirit, I think.
Yeah.
And so, during one of my dad's illnesses, they'd read that book, and I'd read that book. And so and I think that speaks earlier to like people in like particularly Catholic faith are open to like other like type of energies. And she said, she related to me being a mystic and saying the life of a mystic is hard, but you'll always have a home here, so she doesn't really understand, but she'll always support me. So that felt really loving in the way that she could, so. It's been interesting.
So then how, with like having being in a Catholic home and then now coming into like your awakening, how does that like conversation of God hit now?
With my mom or just in general?
In yourself.
In myself? What is God?
Yeah. With like kind of this combination of like now coming into your own terms, like being like kind of, moving through, kind of stepping away from like, I don't really know this whole Catholic thing, but then I kind of went to nothing. Then I had this awakening of all these spirits, and you're kind of like in this like really choose yourself kind of place.
I think that's where I'm happy. Yeah. Happiest is I don't name it. And I find that even in my own desire to study, I rarely actually name the things. And I was like, you should be studying. You should have the names. You should have like a practice that you fall to, or you should work with angels, or you should work with this. And it's just not something that I've been drawn to. And instead more it's energetic, right? And so understanding that I'm working with energies, and if I need to know the name, then I will know the name. And if I need to know the origin, I will know it and I'll ask it. And so it's more of like a trust and intuition and that kind of thing. And I've actually found that that's allowed me to open and go into places that I think if I had a formal training on it, I wouldn't have been able to. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes like your formal training can give you a strong foundation, or sometimes it can give you a limit.
Matrix.
Yeah, a matrix. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. There's the word. I'll use the word.
There's the word.
There's the word.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, so yeah.
Amazing.
And it's been helpful opening up into friendships with other people that also do this. Like meeting you guys has been amazing, right? And beautiful and super supportive and necessary. I don't think these sort of like spiritual journeys and awakenings are something you should navigate alone. Like you have to go it alone. It's deeply personal, but it's helpful if you have a community for sure. Yeah.
Interconnectedness. What about you?
You go next. You're kind of like life. Yeah. Let's do the flow this way.
Okay. Where do you want me to start?
Start with your awareness or your opening to your intuitive gifts.
I think for me,
What that looked like for you.
I think like for me, like I grew up, if we talk about like Meredith growing up in the Catholic home.
Yeah.
I grew up in a sick home. People say Sikh, but it's sick. Education.
Our teacher.
Yes. So that's something I was born into, and I didn't really, I didn't really know what that meant, because you're just kind of born into a belief system. And we weren't like, we didn't go to the temple every Sunday or anything like that, but it was just a foundational part of my family's kind of system or belief. And then, and the belief system within that culture and religion is actually quite unique. I actually didn't know, because when you go to the temple, the language is kind of really old. Like it's not really just in Punjabi, it's Gurmukhi, it's Sanskrit. So you're kind of listening to like vibration, but I don't really even know what it means, because it's not actually like current language. So I would go and I'd be like, I don't really know what they're saying, but it feels good. Like whatever's vibration is nice. I feel really comforted here. And it wasn't until I was probably in my later teens when I was kind of like, what is this? Like, what are they saying? What are they teaching? And it wasn't until like really then that I realized that it's really based on, if I was to define spirituality, that's how I define the religion of Sikhism. And I didn't really know that, because I was like, oh no, I'm not religious at all. I'm spiritual. And that's how I would say it. Because I'm like, I don't really want to be in that matrix of like something that contained. So I'm just going to pick spirituality. I'm going to pick connection with the universe. I'm going to term it that way. And when I studied more, I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. Because it's like,
It's all the same.
it's all the same thing. Because like the founders of Sikhism, like Guru Nanak, he would just literally say, meditate and feel the connection to the universe and talk about that. It's just a connected energy that creates a creation. Right. And so then I was like, that's what spirituality kind of is defined like, that it's this place of universal connection, the grand matrix of it all, and in the energy of oneness. And I even have this tattoo, part of my tattoo right here. It's a symbol called Ikon God, which actually is God is one. So that's the belief system that I was born into, that I tried to understand, then realize, oh, I do believe it. That truly is my foundation. So I think that that created this whole idea of spirituality, or this kind of grander idea of connection, my whole life. And so I think that as I was finding my gifts, it was really kind of gradual. It didn't happen like Meredith. It was just all in one day. It kind of was like these interesting experiences in through even childhood of connecting into people and kind of reading into a field, like in the room of tension. How can I help create more of a harmony in this matrix in the room right now? And I just saw that I had really a good talent for that. And then I got into some kind of intuitive workshops when I was like, my first workshop was when I was 18.
Yeah, you're saying.
Yeah,
That's
like
wild.
it's crazy. Where I was, I had a mentor who was teaching some classes on how to like listen to your inner old lady, like that soul inside of you. And I remember tuning into this thing, and she looked so old, and she would give me my yes or like the inner yes or inner no. And I just remember going to this workshop with a bunch of like 50-year-old women, and I was 18, and I was like, yeah, I'm ready, I think. Like, but it was very like young. And then that was just a gradual, like within my own pace of my maturity, my humanness, just moving through slowly but surely, through yoga, through mentorships, through being a massage therapist, and feeling into the energy of a body through that. And then finally, Body Talk 10 years ago. And then I think that was just a gradual kind of climb up. And so mine kind of has been this like just gradual step by step until today. But I would say with the collective matrix awakening the past 4 years, that I can feel the amplification of what I've been building for my whole life.
And how did your family receive you? How will your friends receive what you do when you're like, I do this? Or is it always just been like, because it's so gradual, they're just like, that's what Pam does?
That makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's been so gradual. I think even like looking back into my family and into my, what's it called? External family? Like your cousins and stuff.
Extended
family. Thank you.
I was like, what sort of matrix word? I don't know.
Extended family. If I look back, like everyone, like even if they're older, like aunts and uncles, everyone's always put me in a position, maybe inappropriate because you're young, but like of like, oh, advice. Pam can give it to us. She knows. So I'd often have like even like a cluster of my young cousins around me going, oh, tell us about this and this and this. And
Teacher Pam.
Yeah, literally Teacher Pam all the time. Doesn't matter what age I was, I would always feel like I had people listening in my family all the time. So I don't think this is a surprise by any means. It's been quite graceful. Now I think because maybe the past few years, I'm becoming a little more uncomfortable for people, because as I'm amplifying it even more, becoming a little bit more cosmic. It's a little different than saying like you're intuitive or you can help heal or you can help.
I love the universe.
I do yoga
and I
I do
trust.
I do yoga and I believe in oneness, and I can meditate on God is one. That's a little different than saying I'm a multidimensional being and I go into dragon form. Like I don't typically talk about that with my family.
Yeah. No, I know. I mean, like there's certain language that you sometimes filter.
Yeah.
Because it's like you're the quackadoodle, right?
Yeah.
It's like fucking quackadoodle over here. It's like,
actually,
God.
it's because I'm a healer because I'm an Arcturian and I come from this other star system. And so let's talk about that. And they're like, what?
I know. It was like literally like the last 6 months of some like deep like starseed healing, which is intergalactic origins within your soul, and just working through that. And my mom's been along for the ride, and she's been like super curious. When I talk to her, I'm like, and I do kind of preface with her sometimes. I'm like, I know it's a little quacky, but for some reason, and like if we just take the mind out of it, like your thoughts, my thoughts, and me questioning, like my body is responding to something. Mm-hmm. Right. And then she's like, no, I totally believe you. There's more. I totally believe you. They just can't like summarize or like, and that's okay. But like, I know what you mean. Like you go into these things and you're having these profound experiences that are changing your life and you're languaging it this way. And then they're not maybe having that, or that's only in movies.
Mm-hmm. I find it one of the least satisfying things to do is to try to articulate one of your spiritual experiences or what you've done is like trying to explain your breathwork session. Like, and then I went to the sun, and then I came back, and there was dragons, and the angel held me and carried me up to God. Yeah.
And then I knew we were on this mountain that portaled us over here, and it's just like, yeah.
And then all the frequencies dropped down, and and then we exchanged the entire earth
today.
The entire reality has changed because of my.
And they're like, oh yeah, man, the reality's changed for sure.
Yeah. They're like, well, how come I still feel really shitty?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe you didn't get the vibration in your DNA activation. I don't know.
Did you ever have these moments where you're like, are we just making all this shit up?
Yeah.
Like I have all those times I'm like, am I just so goddamn creative that like I've now made.
That's how I think, but I'm like, but my body's responding.
Totally.
So if my body's having an experience that my mind's still trying to be like, oh, like what's happening? Check yourself, D, check yourself. But my body and my kundalini's moving, even as I say that. It's like, I'm like, no, like there's something's happening. It doesn't matter if it's correct, if the story is correct or not. It doesn't matter. It's that your body is responding, right? Yeah. So I'm like, let it do its thing and just get out of your own way. And it is what it is.
Well, yeah.
I try to kind of just be like, it's a little quacky and I might not fully understand it on this earth realm. But I also, if I'm in a session with a client, something comes up, I'm like, this is the truth. Like I'm very in belief of what I'm sharing to that client. But when it comes to myself, I'm like, do you check yourself? Like, yeah, am I just deeply creative? And I'm loving the story for myself right now. And oh, my body's responding. Like what is actually happening? And I still question, I think it's healthy.
Absolutely. You should question it. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Pam.
No, I think
it's just so funny.
No, it is, and it's in that. I think this is now where it becomes a little bit like sticky. Where you think about if I was like speaking about my connection to spirit and to if you want to call it universe, God, whatever, then that is almost like okay, great, like that's what you feel, and that's awesome. But it's like now coming into this is a sticky part. Now I'm like, ooh, who can I actually share this with? Yeah. And so if you think about the matrix work again, like we've got this idea of like it's very acceptable to be plugged into certain matrices. Mm-hmm. If it's going to be, well, I don't believe in anything. Well, fine, that's a matrix for that. Great, you're maybe whatever an atheist, that's fine. Or you're Catholic, or you're this. It's all acceptable because it's all part of our shared reality, our kind of really systemic shared reality. And then you go, well, I want to really plug into the matrix where there are star seeds and different star systems and kind of go above like the grid of our planet and go, there is a grander matrix out in the universe that I'm also now becoming aware of. That doesn't make it any less real. Mm-hmm. It's just are you kind of going past the veil into those realities? And then you kind of go into, if you think about soul lineage, and you go, well, yeah, like I feel like there's like a part of my soul lineage or my soul DNA that's plugged into the matrix of being an Arcturian being, which is from Arcturian star system. And then you kind of feel into that. Maybe it's just an archetype. Maybe it's just that. But for me, why that's been really cool, because if you study Arcturian star seeds or aliens.
I love that you're wearing this outfit.
It's because talking
about it. I'm like, you're really
and I did say it's. I'm wearing
it.
My dragon kind of vibe necklace in this Arcturian blue.
I got my alien dress on.
That's it.
I think in a separate episode we're gonna have to do like our alien archetypes
for sure. But it's like, but then I think that there was. Well, it could be that I'm plugging into Arcturian because they happen to be the so-called the galaxy's like most advanced healers.
Yeah, you are, girlfriend.
Right, and like in that shamanic kind of energy.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
totally.
so it really for this lifetime. Yeah. So in this lifetime to like plug into that place really resonates for me.
I don't know why.
You're laughing. It's so good.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm just like, I don't know. I got the giggles.
I know, it's like what we're telling all the people, all the stuff. Like, can you stop talking now? You're exposing all of our secrets.
No, but I mean, is it that sound like? Have you guys studied the religions, like theology? Like, it's not that different.
Well,
it's
that's
like
what
I'm
I
gonna
know.
base my entire life based on like I might go up or I might go down, Ugh, right?
So how come that when
It's not like
people-
it's earthly
So
stuff.
how come when we talk to people who are like maybe really stuck in their belief system that they can't?
I think it's because it's like what we're conditioned to think is acceptable or not. But when you actually stop and we're like, wait a minute. Like, even like lineage stuff is like, I curse you to hell and all your children to come after, right? Like, then that's like, how does that not lineage work? I don't know. Like, pull it back for a second. Let's all take a fucking pause. Let's take a break and be like, what are we actually doing here, folks? You
But I
know, like,
remember-
how is
you know,
this
and
actually different?
The first time I had that thought was when I took Body Talk, and I was like working in it, and I was like, well, I can access the same. Like, I was like, this is going to be the access, right? Like, this is
Finally.
the real deal. I've been searching for
My
it.
new religion.
And then you get in, and you're like, it's all fucking the same. I'm like, you can
Pissed.
access it. It just is like another way around, right?
Yeah.
But you can get to it the same way. Like, it's all the same thing. Whether I'm doing it Reiki or I'm doing Body Talk or I'm doing like shamanic, like whatever. Yeah, the tools I might offer might be slightly different, like the way I might maneuver and bring in a vibration or whatever, but it's kind of, the same thing. I was like, oh.
Oh, confirmed.
You know,
Thank
kitty
you,
cat.
sir.
We've got, if you're not watching, we've got a Meredith's cat come in for a little visit.
She's like, she.
He,
He's like, I'm Starseed. I come from
Absolutely.
the
He's
Lyran
like, I'm a
constellation.
Lyran.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He likes what you're saying, Dee. It's
Yeah.
confirmation.
That's it.
Hi. Thank you. Do you like my giggles today? Yeah.
Yeah.
So sweet.
So I think
Yeah.
that what has happened, I think has actually strengthened my friendships
Nice.
as I come into more of
Can I say something about
Yeah.
your family too?
Yeah.
Is that I feel like for a lot of your nuclear family, which is like brothers, sisters, parents, that you've really expanded this spirituality energy or healing energy to them as well. Like you kind of you brought it into the home and made it safe for everybody else to access. Like, here it is if you guys want it to. So I feel like you've done a lot of really cool influencing for your nuclear family that I don't typically see ever.
It's very true, actually. It is actually quite unique.
It's
Yeah.
very unique
Yeah.
what you've done in that.
I can feel that because my mom is so into this work. She's any part of this. She's like, yes, Starseed. I'm a Syrian. She gets it, right? And she and that just by the influence of mom and I talking, my dad just kind of like it rubs off on his aura. Like he doesn't really involve himself in the conversations, but I can see his system activating in that. And I hold my group sessions for Wild and Wise in our family home. So I think just the vibration of that really changes. I mean, I just did a session for an aunt of mine yesterday, like a really huge one where they're like, oh yeah, sweet. So I even feel my extended and my family also like always look for support.
They're very receptive.
We are, yeah.
And
And maybe
I
it's the
just think it's
foundation of having a belief system in a culture that is open.
Yeah.
To that, like there's already, there's a belief of reincarnation already. There's a belief of one energy that contains us all. There is,
Yeah.
it's already built into the system.
Yeah,
So it's not
that
much
makes
to,
sense. There's a
not much
spirituality
to
in the religion.
push against.
Yeah. I can see that. I think that there's a safety there to go, oh, what she's saying is true. That's not too far out of how I've been taught.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you go to the Eastern, you go to India, you go to Eastern countries, people are commonly saying, oh, I feel a spirit here. Or there's this, that, like it's not an uncommon conversation.
Yeah.
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 That's cool.
What about you?
That's cool.
Yeah, I was born open. Like I just, woo. I look back and I'm like, I don't know what I was doing, but I was doing a lot, and I couldn't. The hard part is that I couldn't conceptualize everything, but I felt a lot and I could see a lot. So I, more specifically, like earliest memories I had is. I could conjure a very specific spirit all the time. Like I could have them talk to me. But they made me I didn't feel safe. I felt really icky when they started talking, and I'd actually would get really physically cold. and shake and vibrate and things like that. And I remember my mom coming in and just, seeing me curled up in a ball, because I'd almost have to go into this like ball and curl up, and I could like hear this person talking. And I remember her being like, what's wrong? Why are you so cold? And I never said anything, because I didn't know how to say anything. I was just having an experience, and you're just thinking, I don't know what I'm doing. Do other people do this? I don't even know. And then so from there, then it was, I would see floating bubbles in my room of like a lot of lifetimes, and whether they were mine or other people's. My mom had a lot.
How old are you?
Gosh, maybe like at that age, like 6 or 7. Okay. The hearing though, the conjuring of spirit, I was probably more like 4 or 5. Like I was quite young. I don't think I was in school yet, full time, like kindergarten type school. The bubbles, I would wake up and see spirit staring at me outside my room. I remember this one time, like very, very angelic being just sitting there watching me. I didn't know it was angelic. I just was like, oh shit. Didn't say that either. I was just like really scared, always in fear, always scared. I'd have a lot of, as I got older, I had a lot of prophetic dreams about my family. So I would dream about a certain scenario, usually about grandparents or something, and then within a week or 2 weeks, it would happen like remarkably to the detailed T. And I even remember being in high school and like not necessarily practicing being psychic, but this guy's like, I bet you don't know me, ha ha ha. And I was like, well, and I don't know why I don't know. I just started telling him like, you're this way and you're probably like this because of this and because you had this and your trauma was like this. And he just looked at me and he was so freaked out. He's like, who are you? Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. I just had really good advice for people. I was like, I can tell you what you need to know, right? Like, this is what you got to do. This is why. And they're like, yeah. And I was always like the advice girl, right?
We should have had a tent. We could charge people.
I should have had a tent, and it was with my cards or something. Yeah, sure. And I remember, especially the voice really scared me. Where I was like, I'm not ever going to do that again. Like, so I stopped a lot. So I think I had to reopen to a degree because I don't actually all the time physically see with my eye. I rarely hear like I hear my voice now. Like it's all through those safe filters of boundaries where it feels like I can still see spirit and do all that, but like when I want to. So
I feel like that's quite common for people that they've had like a really scary experience young and then they shut it down.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I know you didn't shut it down, but
I think it was like
that so much, yeah.
The hearing I did, and I'm like, it's only been probably in the last 3 years that my clairaudience has come back on and that's from intense, like, working intuitive muscles. Like it's finally, I'm allowing to trust that. So for me, we didn't talk about spirituality or psychic energy or anything like that. I grew up in like probably our foundation was most likely Christianity, but it wasn't like we were going to church every week. It was more like holidays. My mom came from a really Christian Pentecostal background. My dad came more from Catholic, but when they raised the families or our family, it wasn't pushed on us to believe it. And I remember a lot of times that when I did go to church, and they're like, okay, you can go off to preschool and, learn about Jesus. Like, I was like, I ain't going anywhere. I'm staying with the adults. I want to know what this guy's saying. But
I got some advice for him.
But even when I was in there, I was like, this isn't right for me. Like and that was like, again, when I was like 8, 9 or 10, and it was not because they're wrong, but the way that matrix was appearing for me felt really limiting, I think. And I maybe there was something already that new in me that I was like, I can't express through this way. But throughout my, I would say my teen years and even early 20s, I would kind of find myself in and out of like that being still my go-to. Like when I would have a crisis or start to feel like spiritually curious, I would like read the books about God and Jesus and the Bible and, how do they teach it? So so a lot of my background is a lot of like health crisis and traumatic experiences through health. And so when I would be in like deep, like what's happening to me, what's happening to my body, I'd be like, why does God cause suffering? Like it would go into still a Christianity belief. So I would say I didn't fully step out of that matrix until my early 20s. And it was tied up in like an ex-boyfriend who was really religious, Christian wise and Pentecostal. That was like, why are you reading these spiritual based books? So now I started to branch into like, let me learn about spirituality. And he's like, what are you like? That's of the devil. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh my God, I'm a bad person. So I really then was still breaking free and struggling with like, I'm a bad person because I am so curious and I have had, and like now I'm having all these like, rememberings of my childhood and all these giftings. Like, why am I a bad person because of that? And they're just existed since I was like, who knows what happened in infancy? Like, what I was experiencing as an infant, like, who knows? So it was a lot of, I fell into the depths of like, oh, this work is really scary and fear-based and bad. And when I ended that relationship, and funny enough, we had a spirit living in the house that we were renting in, and I was like, don't you see it? And it started to call my name every night. I'd be going to bed and it would call my name. I'd wake up and I'd be like, no, literally.
Deanne.
And I'd be like, what? Who, what?
Yeah.
And there's nobody in the room. All the light stuff would go on at night. He was very cheeky. He was like an older gentleman that was in there. He always stood by the one closet door. I could see him. I can still see him to this day. And I remember my mom came to stay over to visit me. I was living in Vancouver at the time, and I didn't say anything to her. I was just like pale as fuck all the time because I'm like in this crisis of spirituality, and there's a ghost haunting me every night. So she's like, you don't look, she says to me, you don't look well. And I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm just like, there's a lot going on. And then afterwards she goes, yeah, there's somebody in your room. Hey. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, she told me what she thought the spirit looked at. I was like, that's what I see too. So then I was like, I know there's something's happening. I know there's truth to this. So, so from there on,
was that the first time your mom kind of showed her kind of
a little
senses?
bit, but not my mom has always been deeply spiritual. She's also really, been under a really strong matrix of religion. So for her, she's open to a certain point, but not so far because it's like, ooh, that's too scary to go beyond more. So she's open and she's always accepted me. She was like, and she even says it, like, I knew there was always something different about you. Like, she's like, there was something, I just didn't know what it was. And my mom was like, I wonder what it would be like to not go like to the grocery store and the checkout and kind of like really feel and know everything about that person. Right. Yeah. So she does, but she doesn't actively use it or do it. But if it came into that, she could. Mm-hmm. So it's there. She knows it's there too, but it's not her life's purpose to use it, I don't think, necessarily in like this big career way or stuff like that. But she's always been very accepting. My dad is like, I don't know if my dad has ever known these experiences. I don't talk to him about this stuff. When I started to study this work as a career and I was working like a 9 to 5, hello kitty cat, the kitty's back. He's like, you do what? It's what? And I gave him some sessions because he's like, let me experience. And they were just like gentle Reiki when I was starting Reiki. And he goes, yeah, I feel a lot of pressure in my head. He's like, oh, it's really interesting. For him, he just cares that I'm happy that I'm successful and I can take care of myself. Like, that's what he worries about. Like, if he's like, if you're leaving your 9 to 5, you better be working in some place that makes you money. Because, you left this job to do this. And I'm like, I can make more money, Dad, and I am. So what's your, so it's all, I think, in love, but he doesn't understand. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if he knows the lengths that I go at. My mom does, because I am openly share, and she's like, even the starseed stuff is a bit of a stretch for her, but she's like, I believe it. I do know there's more. I just don't know what that is. And she's, okay with it. So my brother, I remember him saying once that he thought, like, I think intuitive readers and stuff, they can play off what you are saying. So, like, they know what I do for a living, but they never really ask me. Yeah. We have family dinners. We don't talk about it. So it's not, and I'm very openly, like I'll tell people what I do, like now, and I meet people like, what do you do? I'm like, the easiest way is like, I'm kind of like a psychic medium. You know, it's in a way what I am and what I'm doing, but I also offer it this way, in these ways. And they're like, oh, interesting. Right? So, and now I'm almost at this place where I'm now explaining it to my children. You know, what does mommy do for work? And it started as like I'm helping like people and clients, and I work with people and make sure that they feel good in their body and like all these things. And now explaining more about what intuition is and experiences, and without also attaching my matrix onto them. Right? Like, even though it's like, what makes my matrix better than Christianity or something? It doesn't. It's whatever is for that individual. But I have also opened to a belief system of this universe and all these things and what I've experienced. And now how do I properly share that with my children, that I'm not cloaking them so much, but they have freedom to experience too. So I'm really conscious and aware of those matrices now with my kids, but also if they're having an experience of spirituality or psychic energy, that I'm trying to support them, and also saying like, mommy does that too, or mommy feels that. Like, I know what that's like, and this is how we can work with it. Or if you feel scared, you know, because Ellie went through a phase where she'd talk about how she could see people's color.
Right.
And stuff. And so then it was like, draw it, honey. Why don't you draw it for me? Because it's like that, when they're young, their languaging isn't like, well, I channeled a spirit and then the spirit showed me this and I heard him say, like, it's not, they don't know.
Or Juno she felt a spirit in her room for a long time.
Yeah. And even Ellie in our house, she doesn't want to go into specific rooms because she says, I feel weird. She just says it like that. I feel weird. So yeah, my girls say definitely, and I do know there can be genetic components, or what I've I think heard maybe in research. I don't know if it's actually legitimately researched, but that there is a genetic component to psychic ability, and it's usually like handed down through the generations and ancestral lineages and things. So I'm prepared, and now as it's happening or coming up, I didn't realize that. I was like, oh, I'll know all the information for them. I'll have it all. But now I'm like, what information is proper for them to still explore and for them to create their own identity in it?
I just keep hearing too that it doesn't really matter. Like, just as Meredith did, and you kind of found your own way, so will they, because you're so open-minded. You don't have to be as scared about it or worried, because because you're like, cool, choose your own adventure kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That when they're kind of growing up and they're feeling for themselves, if they're like, oh, mom, actually, I don't really want to plug into that. I don't plug into this. You're like, great. Yeah. And so it's just that openness. I feel like there is that bit of a fear I'm going to like fuck up.
Yeah. Or like, oh, my mommy's like the quackadoodle. Like, I'm like, is it going to go into that? And then, you know, because like as an adult, when you talk about it, there's a lot of like self-awareness, and I have a lot of self-love for myself, that I've gotten to a point where I can share this, and I actually don't care if people like me, if I do this for a living, or, you know, curse me. It doesn't matter. But as children sharing to other children, those children might ridicule or not know, like, oh, if this is, oh, my mommy talks to, like, what if she's just said it like, my mommy can talk to dead people?
Yeah.
And then what's that conversation like for her in that? Because if I was to say it to adults aren't going to, like, they could ridicule me, but I'm at that place where I can be like, I don't care. Whereas she's so impressionable. So I'm also curious. I'm also have a little bit of that. Like, I'm curious how this is going to play out as a parent who does something that's very alternative, what that looks like.
Yeah.
So I'm just observing that part too, because I'm like, that's going to be interesting. And it might not be anything at all.
And I think that's almost like, that could be anything though. Like, you can be like, oh, your father works at this job, like, haha, you know what I mean? Like that, you know, like.
But it's still like a little bit more of a pokeable thing, because it's like, ooh, dead people, like, that's not real.
I mean, have you ever prayed to a saint?
Right. Yeah.
Dead people.
Yeah. No, totally. But it's like, but that's, you know,
I mean, I know
put
it's
in
different.
a container
Don't come at me,
that's
folks,
really
but,
approved of.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
I mean, I think it's interesting too. I can hear you, Dee, trying to like pull out your experience of growing up with gifts, and I like there was some unnamed loneliness and isolation and like, you know, like challenging friendships, having always been aware of these gifts because you're very aware that you didn't fit in like
Yeah,
for the
it's
whole
very-
thing. And so then bringing that awareness to now your girls and wanting to be like, hey, this is real, but also it's
Yeah.
really beautiful to actually
Yeah.
listen to try to navigate that and
Yeah.
be open to that. And I'm so curious.
Yeah. How it's going to play out.
Yeah.
And even like, I mean, in a way I was very closeted with my family with this, like my extended family. I was closeted with my own family too, because I had no idea that I was doing it, that I was gifted in that way. But even now my extended family, it's like coming out and now there's the Instagram and this podcast and all these things where I'm talking a lot more in my interdimensional aspects of self and my origins. And a lot of them are very like, that's really cool and interesting. And then I think they also come from a lot of religious backgrounds that it's kind of like they can't fathom. So sometimes it's like, I think even to this day, it's like trying to tell my grandma what I do for a living is like saying I just massage.
Sorry, just the door just opened, but it's the cat.
It's the cat. It's not a spirit. Yeah, it's a cat.
Spirit has come in. Oh my God.
No,
They're like,
that cat doesn't respect any spirit.
yeah.
That's awesome. It's like, see, I am real. If anybody tries to say no, I just walked into this room to show
Yeah.
you that I am.
Yeah.
It's legit.
Yeah.
But I think I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm like, it doesn't matter anymore. I don't
Yeah.
care. Like I'm too in my journey and my purpose at this point, and not in a way that I constantly, like I said, don't check myself and see
Yeah.
like reality versus like, is that still, you're still good, Dee? Like you're still like in your grounded energy with it. But I'm like, you like me or you don't.
Yeah.
Even if you're family or your friends, like you either like it and you can look past it, we can still have fun, like going on. I don't have to talk about this all the time, but like, that's who I am.
Yeah.
I think too, like you start to do like the proof in the pudding kind of thing, a little bit of it being like, okay, I could deny this. And yet I was just for example, like I was just able to like hold space in a session for two people I love and have them have like unique, deep experiences and that do not touch on anything I have been able to work into in another thing. So at what point is that going to start to mean more to me than the opinions of others? And I mean, the opinions of others, and like, we're talking about primal fear stuff here, right? We're talking about tribal safety. We're talking about, you know, like literal
Reptilian brain stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's not little, right?
Yeah.
That's like huge influence. And so I feel like if you're navigating that, to belittle that and just be like, oh, just don't care what other people think. That is a journey, you know, like you're just describing, like you have to allow yourself to go through all these things and to expand and grow. But when you do allow that journey, it comes from the heart, and that you do hit that point of like, this is more important than any of my doubts or any of these other fears.
Yep.
And I feel like that's maybe when you can open up into, I'm hoping we can just like segue a tiny bit into what it means to have community in spirituality, right? And how that helps or hinders navigation of gifts and things like that. Because I think there's that infancy time of coming out. I know for me, when I looked around and I was like, this is spirituality. And I was like, hell to the no, right? Like I saw like a lot of the things I saw, which was, to be honest, just social media and things like that.
Yeah.
I did not resonate with at all because I didn't feel authentic to me at that time. And I mean, now I'm looking back, I just needed to be with myself for a little bit and work on like, without giving too many stories attached to it. And I think that's a gift. And I found enough like within that first year or two to like, you know, form some really beautiful friendships and like supportive things that have helped me a lot. But it is interesting that first little like wake up period, or that when you're stepping into that new thing of what it means to be in a community, right? And then that same tribal like primal fear comes in when you don't resonate with, because I've seen that play out as well in like spiritual communities of like the same dynamics of jealousy or like indifference or feeling like you need to, like, if you want to be here, you have to believe this. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're against this, if you're not with us, you're like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, they're the same kind of dynamics can play out of isolation and things like that. But
And I'm even feeling like, even if you come into a community of spirituality, there's different like vibrations within that of
Yeah.
where people are open to. So I've, started with certain groups or people, and it's been at the same, wavelength of our opening or our journey. And then all of a sudden, I could potentially get an eye roll now because I've gone too far maybe into spirituality of, and I've just lost it because now I'm talking about this and it's the eye roll. And it's like, it's not necessarily that like I'm wrong or they're bad. It's more just the comfortability. Everyone has that journey. So it's like you can pop in and out of communities as you grow.
Yeah.
And that's safe too, to not just because you find a community or even a practitioner that felt good at one point, we can easily outgrow that. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
To reconnect with others, to continue to feel supported and seen in our journey where we're at.
Yeah.
And so I've really noticed that in my spiritual community. I've had people that have grown really alongside me very like kind of equally, and then I've had others where we started out in a certain way and then it reached a point and then there's no more connection because it's not safe anymore to share. So yeah.
Which is
it's
natural,
interesting.
really, isn't it? Because it's
It
like
is,
it is
yeah.
a part of like growth
In
and
anything.
development and everything, whether you're in
Absolutely.
spiritual or not. It's part of the human experience. And I think that the more we can normalize that and be like, okay, and follow that heart or that intuition thing of like, this feels good or this feels right now. And it's okay if it doesn't feel right. Like I can step away. I love how you said pop in, pop out for a little bit and really see what's aligned in my heart and then come back. And that conscious choice all that time, whether yes or no, is so powerful, especially in the intuitive, when you start getting into intuitive channeling or intuitive work, being able to differentiate that and understand that is like a really, really beautiful like gift and experience.
It's like it's in self, like I want to say self-preservation, but like in it, like not in like a wall kind of a way, like where like I've noticed that for my whole life, kind of moving, kind of plugging from this friend aspect of community into this community, depending on like where am I in my upward spiral of, whatever ascension or whatever it is in my own self, not talking like the big way, but in my own inner personal ascension. And then for me, like talking about the safety of speaking and safety of communication, it's like for me, how I know how important that is for my nervous system to be within a community that can like, I'm not feeling the eye roll or the judgment. I can be really like open. I can feel safe to express and to like have, such safety of like unconditional love. And I think that's kind of the experience of like more and more I'm finding now is like in my current community, it's like unconditional love. Like you can be
this or that,
or you can be completely in your shadow right now, expressing all those sorts of stuff, and we still got you. I'm not gonna like kick you. You know what I mean? Where there's it's like as had moved through different matrices of community, up and kind of moving through into at this place where I'm right now, I'm like, whoa, currently I'm in a very unconditional love type of community. And that just feels like so freaking good. And sometimes it just takes time depending on where you are with your own self-love, like as you're rising up through different layers of self, what community is going to resonate at that point until you're where you're working with that piece of self-love.
Yeah. And I'm hearing that because community can really allow that like say if you had some sort of session or you were working on a deep part of yourself that you've been months healing on, that community can really, that acceptance or that held part of community can really influence whether that healing and you in your safety allow that healing to unfold and just let go and continue, or if you don't feel safe or you're now shamed or wronged or eye rolled, that it can kind of almost stop it.
Yeah.
Too.
Community is so powerful, and to be able to witness stuff in community in a way that feels good, like that. I've been able to witness some experiences, especially working with the trauma work that I do, with like mentors or leaders doing like reparative work or these sort of things in community, is just really, really, there's no replacement for that.
Yeah.
But also just knowing that, if you're not feeling like you found your community, it's okay. Like just, I believe
here.
Yeah.
The three fates.
Yeah.
We got community for you. Yeah.
But that idea of like, there are times when you're going to feel lonely and confused and isolated, especially when it comes to family stuff. But I think that the mistake would be to assume that you're alone in that, right? You might be isolated, but you're not alone. There's someone else that's going through it too, or that will resonate, and that can be. I think that's when the faith part comes in, because you start to say, okay, universe, I don't really know, I'm feeling lonely, and how can you help me with this? And people show up. Like that's when synchronicities pop in, and new friends pop in, and new opportunities and things like that. So,
and the to not look outside of yourself for permission.
Yeah.
The permission for this work and for what you want to explore and become and do and all of that and heal is your own permission. If you wait for somebody else to be comfortable with what you are, it's not going to open. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful.
Permission. Yeah. Give yourself the permission.
Love that.
Wow, that was
Pam?
a quick hour.
No,
I know it was a really quick hour.
That was
Holy
beautiful.
moly.
Do you have any final words, Pammy D?
Pammy D. Trust your heart.
Yeah.
Trust your heart with who you're meant to be in community with and connection with. And if it resonates with your heart space and they're safe, then freaking
Go for it. Yeah.
And if you're not sure about your heart, just keep trying. Keep going
trying.
back in. Yeah.
Keep
Yeah,
going
and
and ask for it. Literally send out your prayer or ask your guides to call in that community.
Yeah.
That's where you should be.
Yeah. And then if you plug into something that ends up feeling not right, then great. You got
Yeah.
some discernment there. And
And
One of my
listening to
favorite
it.
things is learning how to say no instead.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
for the traumas, like I remember one of the mentors or books we read was she's like, if someone says no to me, I like not personal. I'm just happy that they have a no, right? Especially when you're learning about boundaries and things like that. So do you have a no? Do you have a yes? And can you work within both of those is so powerful.
Yeah.
I'll also say let's all advice, plug into the matrix of unconditional love for yourself.
Pam's always holding that one. Oh, she's so positive.
Right? I'm like, let's find that
I'm like,
matrix.
yeah, but
Unconditional love is it? Yeah, love yourself.
And I'm like, go into deep permission with that one.
Yeah, exactly.
like, don't forget the dark part.
Unconditional love. That means the dark part too. That's the whole point.
That's why we're birth, life, and death, y'all. Like if you're like new listening and you're like, what? I still don't get this whole birth, life, death archetype thing. We're kind of bringing. We
literally
all
it.
hold a certain where we're very pocketed.
Yeah.
And we can see other parts of it, but we just
You
can
agreed
offer
to the
that.
archetype, and the
We
archetype
fucking agreed. Yeah.
has
Moves
a voice.
through us.
Yeah, very much so.
We are conduits.
Well, I love everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much.
We
for
love
being
y'all.
here.
Thanks for listening.
Have a beautiful day.
Three fates.
Three fates.
Out.
Three fates out. Go.
Three fates. Three. Got a gang sign now.
Teachers trying to.